It's the end of June 2025 and it's been 3 years since I walked onto this site, and although so much has changed, the layout is basically the same with this path. The boundaries, a polytunnel and a shed, although there was a greenhouse on a year before I came which was removed, so everything's the same. But the one thing that has changed is that this site is absolutely no longer a sort of barren wasteland that just grew weeds and wouldn't really grow vegetables. It's been changed and transformed by two very simple things, and that is by making and applying really good compost to the soil and minimal disturbance, not digging it over, planting lots of vegetables and cover crops in the ground, keeping the ground full virtually all the time, as much as you possibly can, because living roots in the soil give you soil health. What you're doing is you're supporting the vast array of microbes and fungi and worms and wildlife in the soil by keeping things growing. And that had been sort of absent on this site for many years, with people coming on and rotivating and using chemicals and nitrogen and all the other stuff that generally people grow with these days. You know, it's kind of a shortcut to success, they think, but in the long term, you know, things start to fail, diseases and pests take over, and now it's really short-sighted, I think. So what have I learned in the 3 years that I've been on here? I mean, I've been growing since I was a kid. I've been on this site since I was probably 6 or 7 years old. My father had an allotment just behind you on the camera there, about 2 back. My uncle had an allotment opposite us. My sister's still got an allotment on here. So I've been coming on this site up virtually all my life, but it's 3 years since I took one on. Now, I've grown in back gardens, and I used to have a big garden that was about the size of a half plot, so I used to grow all my fruit and vegetables on there. And where I am now, I've been growing in that garden for years and years. But there are some striking differences between growing at home and growing out here. This is semi-rural. I know a lot of allotments are semi-rural areas or on the edge of rural land, and the pressures out here are vastly different to the pressures at home. At home, for instance, my biggest pests would maybe be cats scratching things up and slugs. Out here, you've still got the slugs, but you've got thousands more slugs. Me in particular, because I've got this big field, and the slugs, there's a slug army lives on there which are constantly rampaging across. But allotment sites in general are very sluggy areas. You've also got the added pressure of wildlife like pigeons and pheasants and partridge and rats, moles, voles, everything, mice. They're just constantly rampaging through the soil. It's their home. They're just looking for something to eat all the time, or just destroying your plants because they can do, which seems, you know, they seem to get a kick out of that. I don't know why. Even if they're not going to eat something, they'll pull it out the ground. So the vast difference here is nets are your friend. You've just got to grow under nets on the vast majority of the plants you grow. Things like potatoes are going to be fine, but most stuff you start needs to be protected until it gets to a decent height where the pests and problems they're not going to encounter problems. But the brassicas out here, it's alive with cabbage white butterflies, so you still need to have nets on. The temperatures out here are a lot colder than in town. I don't live far away, it's only a mile, but I really notice the temperature there is vastly different to the temperature here. It can be up to 4, 5, 6 degrees colder here at night than it can be in the town with all the houses and everything. So frosts, which might not even touch us at home, will be hard here, you know, and it just affects your plants and what you're growing. That's some of the negatives, but the really great thing about having an allotment is it's having all this space to grow food, and there is enough ground here to feed a family. But you do need to be here working the ground and looking after your ground. And when I came onto this allotment, I knew exactly what needed to be done. I looked at the soil, which was dead and lifeless, just absolutely covered in weed this high from one end to the other, every weed you can think of. It'd just been abandoned for years and years. People had taken it on and given up, and I've got a video somewhere down the list, if I remember I'll put a link in, about how I changed and transformed this allotment from what it was to basically what it is now. But I knew the best approach, and it's what I've been doing since the 1980s when I had my own little piece of garden that I grew vegetables in, was permaculture, not digging, minimal disturbance, and applying compost. So in that respect, it's the easiest way to manage this land. If you dig in the soil, you're killing the soil life, and you're constantly churning over weed seeds which are going to grow and proliferate.
Hi there, this is Simon calling from Compare the Networks. How are you doing today?
So I knew when I walked on this site and I saw the ground and the absolute volume of weed on it, that I had to carry on, you know, using permaculture, not digging the soil over, applying compost. And to that extent, we need compost, and we need to make compost, so everything that grows on this ground goes into the compost bays and is returned. The other nice thing about having allotments is the community aspect of it. So I actually already knew people on here when I came on 3 years ago. I knew quite a few of the people here, including my sister was on here. A couple of the people down my street have allotments on here. So it's nice to have that little bit of community spirit, and we have events in the summer. There's an Easter egg hunt for the children, and there's the summer show which we all take a few veg in, and a little bit of there's a little bit of friendly competition aspects of it, you know, who's got the best garlic or who's got the nicest carrots or whatever. Yeah, it's good fun. And the testament to no dig and applying compost is the height of this cone. It's above me now, and I only did a video on this about 2 weeks ago when it was, you know, waist height, and look at the growth. And this is another thing about allotments. If you've got growth like this and you pack your plants in and you cover the soil surface, you're going to get far less weed growing, because let me tell you that allotment sites are basically weed factories. That is what you've got to consider when you come here and think of taking one on. There are so many neglected allotments, there are so many boundaries, backs of allotments that just proliferate in weed. They are weed factories. The weeds is constantly circling around the site, and you've got people who are inexperienced, and you know, it's not their fault. They don't understand that if you put a load of carrots in and you don't put a net on, you're going to get carrot root fly, and those sites become breeding grounds for carrot root fly that is constantly then searching the site looking for other carrots. When the ground is unhealthy, which a lot of it is, you know, through constant digging, tilling and rotivating, then you get pests and diseases coming up in the plants because they've got no immune system. Basically, they're really unhealthy. So you've also got other diseases that are constantly circulating, fungal diseases that are constantly circulating around the site. So that having all this space to grow food is absolutely fantastic, but it does come with its problems. And I've not had to buy any vegetables at all, me and some of my family, for the last 2 years, because I can grow enough food on here for us to eat really well. And the food you grow on here, well, the food I'm growing on here, is the healthiest food you can possibly get hold of or eat. And I would say another really important thing you need on an allotment site is a polytunnel or a greenhouse. Again, I did a video in here only a couple of weeks ago, and the tomatoes were about here. Well, they've now all virtually hit the roof, so they're going to have to be stopped, but the fruit on them is just amazing. They are full of fruit, and the melons likewise. I think these particular melons here were around this height 2 weeks ago, and now they're up here constantly. Every single day I'm winding these around the strings because they just grow so fast. Again, the ground here in this tunnel was never dug. When I came on, I simply put the tunnel up, applied compost, And this is the only space that I cannot grow green manure in, because it's so important, this polytunnel. The gap between when there's something growing in it is so short, there isn't actually time to get any seed in the ground and grow it. Polytunnels and greenhouses are just amazing places out here for sort of weather security, so it extends the year at the beginning of the year and the end of the year by up to a month in some years. And you can also grow really tender things like these melons, and the tomatoes thrive in greenhouses and polytunnels. If we grow tomatoes out here, which I have tried for 3 years now, every single year they will get blight towards the end of the year. Just as the fruit's starting to ripen, the blight will come and knock them all out. But in here, you know, you've a lot more chance of them not getting blight, because the environment in here is just so much better than outside. They're also great places for starting your seedlings and for growing crops in over winter. I can fill this with lettuce at the back end of the year, and we can just be picking lettuce. I also put early onions in. I've also put cabbage and cauliflowers in here in December, and we've had a crop by March. Potatoes in buckets, they'll go in here in December and January, as will carrots and things like that, just to get an early crop. So in March time, when there's really nothing out there, we've got food growing in the polytunnel. Just amazing places. I would like a bigger one. I would like a much bigger one, but site rules don't allow, unfortunately. Then you look at this beautiful coriander here, and this just was one single plant just growing in here last year that set its own seed, and it's come back again this year, and it's just too beautiful not to leave in. It's absolutely stunning, and the smell is just amazing coming off it. And this area here, I suppose, is quite large when I compare how much ground I've actually got to grow on. It's as big as the polytunnel, but it's just the most vital part of the allotment. There's 3 bins here for making the compost. There's 2 storage bins here for holding the compost. This one has generally always got something in it. It has now, it's about half full, just slightly under. This one is making some potting and seedling compost ready for next year. It's full of leaves and wood chip and partially decomposed compost, blended, all mixed in layers. It started here, it's lost about 3 foot, so by the time that bin is half full, we'll have half a cubic metre of potting mix and seedling mix for the beginning of next year. This compost is so precious. It's I just cannot, the trouble is you can't make enough. You cannot make enough compost to cover your ground. I can make a fair bit. On average, I make 2.5 cubic metres of compost every year, but just 2.5 metres just doesn't cut it when you've got all this ground to cover and the polytunnel. And in that respect, I also grow compost. So I grow green manure, different kinds of crops, not really edible crops, although some of them can be edible. But as all these potatoes come out now, which will be in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I will be starting to put in a cover crop, a green manure crop, or as I just like to call it, I'm growing compost. A lot of the beds, the stuff I'm going to put in the next month, I'm just going to literally just let it grow, either chop it down or just let it fall onto the ground and decompose, because that gives the soil microbes, that it just extends the year for them. It gives them something to feed on as the roots decay in the ground. The worms pull all the vegetation in over winter, and the microbes also, which also helps the microbes. And to that end, I have just started a bed, which will be the next video coming out actually. It's one of the smaller beds at the back, and I've planted 6 or 7 crops that I have never grown before. So I've put them in strips, and I've only put them in this small bed just to see the growth habit, because what happens in that bed this year will determine what happens on the vast majority of the site. The biggest bulk of the first crop on my allotment is potatoes, because you know they're one of the staples I eat. Potatoes, corn, carrots and onions, they're my main favoured crops that I like to grow, but I also grow a lot of cabbage, cauliflower, garlic and things like that, and peas and beans. So that's basically what I'm into growing. But these bins, if I put my hand under there now, there's heat screaming out of there today. These bins are what make all this happen. So if you're taking on an allotment, guys, just make a compost heap, even if it's a derelict wasteland. When you get on, get all that trimmed, cut down and put into composting. Don't worry about weed seeds. There's weed seeds galore blowing around in the air. So you're never going to have an allotment that doesn't grow weeds. It's totally impossible, especially on this site when there are so many allotments that are this high in weed now. It's kind of annoying, but it's one of the things you have to put up with. I've got many videos on my channel about all the problems I've encountered on here, such as how to deal with slugs, how to deal with the wireworms, which are endemic on here because of the grassland at the side of me. The nets and things are vital for the wildlife here, i.e. the wood pigeons, partridge and pheasants. And combating the rats when your corn cobs are starting, and just as they come ready, the rats will absolutely invade the site and they will strip every cob off every single plant. They just destroy them. So I found a really excellent method of combating that, and I'm going to just I've already got a video on it, how to combat the rats on the corn and the mice. So I'm going to do a little update on that just coming, because it's nearly time now to start making these little cones that cover the cobs, and it just 100% works in stopping rats and mice eating the cobs. And the cobs don't cook inside like they do. I see a lot of people putting bottles and things on the cobs. Well, it's not good for the cob. It cooks inside and the corn goes really pasty and horrible. But this works, guys. I'll do that video in about a week's time, maybe 2 weeks, and just in time to get them on the plants, which are just coming now. So what have the last 3 years taught me? Well, in here, for instance, are my summer carrots, a variety called Touchon. And if you've never grown your own carrots, you really do not understand how beautiful and tasty real, organically or naturally grown carrots really are. These are absolutely just amazing. The taste difference from shop bought to what you can actually grow yourself is incredible. So 3 years, yeah, I've really enjoyed doing it. I really have. I really enjoy the growing, and I enjoy the eating even more. But would I do it all again? Absolutely, in a heartbeat I would, because I love to know where my food has come from, and I love knowing that there's no sprays or nasty chemicals on my food. The food is healthy. It's the healthiest food, you know, I can eat and give to my family, and there is an absolute abundance of it. Well, we're at the end of June and already there are 1 kilo of frozen peas in the freezer. This particular variety is Hearst Green Shaft. If you've grown these yourself, I don't even have to tell you. The kilo of peas came from that single frame and a little row in here that was put in March. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more frames like this growing, so I'm expecting to put at least another 2 to 3 kilos of peas in the freezer for over winter. Again, another reason why I'm here, because you cannot buy stuff like this, guys. And the array of vegetables you can actually grow yourself, the vast majority of things I grow you cannot get in the shops. So all these beautiful varieties that are not commercially grown, you can grow them yourselves, and they're grown for taste primarily. They're not grown for size, for bulk, for massive crops, you know, that rely on chemicals to grow them. These are selected varieties which you can grow here on the ground and just get amazing tasty food. I will say, if your name's coming up on the list now to get your first allotment, just be prepared for the work you're going to have to do on it. it's no good coming once every month. You just will never get on top of it and you will absolutely fail. You need to be here every week for at least 2 or 3 hours. That is an absolute minimum. And you need to get your ground full, and not just with one crop at the beginning of the year. You need to keep planting in your ground. It really isn't hard. If I was still working, I could probably still manage this site as it's set up now. It would have just taken me longer initially to set it up because I wouldn't have had the time to do the work I did. But you know, going forward, yes, if I was at work, I could literally come here for an hour, 2 hours every week, and this time of year all I would be doing is harvesting, because there's very little to do on ground that is not disturbed and is covered in compost and covered with plants. You're just waiting for the crops to grow, waiting to harvest. When a bed comes empty, you just simply replant and get something else in, either compost, you grow your compost, or you grow some more food. And the amount of food you can grow on an allotment is just absolutely staggering, guys. So here, these were some beetroot sown a little bit earlier. Look at those beauties. These are grown in with onions and other things. There's so many of these at the moment, I'm virtually giving them away. They're just all over the site, just interplanted here and there amongst other crops. This is absolutely the benefit of not digging your ground over and just applying just a little bit of compost on the soil and putting in cover crops, because you can grow like this. The Greek Gigantis butter beans are coming on really strong now. And as I've already said, and I always keep saying on my videos, look after your soil and the soil will look after your plants. It's that simple. I've got so many videos, as I've already said, on various different subjects. There's new videos coming out all the time, every week generally. I sometimes put 2 a week out. I really love the process of making videos and just showing people what can be achieved naturally. A video I did earlier in the year was called Taking on a New Allotment, and I gave some hints and ideas what you could do with various sites on here. Well, towards the end of this year, we're just going to go back over them sites and just see what has happened to them over the course of this last 12 months or 10 months it will be. I'm looking forward to videoing that and just see the changes that have been made, or that haven't been made maybe. Right guys, I could literally talk for hours on this subject about allotments and the joys and pleasures, the pitfalls and downfalls, and every year is different. You know, the weather affects so much of what we do. In a bad year, some things will do awful, but in that same year some things will do really well. So you've just got to adapt and change with the changes. And I think I'll stop waffling now, and I will see you in the next video, which will be planning this year's green manure or compost, which it will give you all plenty of time to do this yourself as you take out your first crops and grow yourself some compost instead of breaking your back trying to make it all, which I've generally been doing the last 2 years. Right, thanks for watching. I will see you soon.